Have you ever wondered what happens after you die? Of course you have. Everyone thinks about it at some point. It's only human. Everyone wonders who will miss them, but what if there was a way to see how people reacted to your death? Would that be a power you would want to have? This premise is the crux of the Torchwood episode Random Shoes by Chiquetta May, which always seems to get overlooked or dismissed by fans of the show and Doctor Who as a whole. This is regarded by many as one of the weakest episodes of Torchwood, because it's very similar to the despised Doctor Who episode Love and Monsters, being an episode recorded alongside another, therefore eliminating a number of the core cast and focusing on a one-off character instead. However, much like Love and Monsters, I would argue that this format allows for a very unique and experimental episode to be made. Random Shoes is all about a young man named Eugene who realises he's dead and goes on a journey to solve his own death as a spirit, seeing the emotional impact on his friends and family along the way. As I said, this episode is always overlooked, but is it actually the sleeper hit of Torchwood Series 1 with a brilliantly grounded and tragically inspiring story? Well, let's find out. It's time to review Random Shoes.
Oh, this is truly legendary.
The opening of Random Shoes is good for establishing Eugene's character as being a bit of a lovable nerd, since he lists off stats about the speed of light and other scientific things. The voiceover gives him that characterization instantly, making him an Elton Pope kind of character, who isn't just defined for their love of the Doctor or Torchwood. That love just stems from the wider obsession with science and sci-fi. It's a good way to humanize him and make him relatable right off the bat, building a connection with him. There's also a very nice, albeit short misdirect as he walks over to where Torchwood are investigating a body. At first it seems like he's been let through by the police, and then he name drops the 3 Torchwood members as if they're friends, them seemingly reacting to his presence. It all feels perfectly normal until you realise he's the dead body they're investigating. It's a really great gut punch for both Eugene and the viewer because he can't quite realise it, which reflects the sudden nature of death and how final it is. He's a ghost, unable to interact with anyone or be noticed. It's just him on his own plane of existence. The scene is shot in a really good way that makes Eugene a lot more faded and grey compared to everyone around him. They're wearing more noticeable colours, but he's there in these faded clothes and just doesn't stand out when he's near the Torchwood members. Even though they're wearing dark clothes, the darkness is more vibrant compared to his dull colours. I think this sets him up as a good, ordinary human presence wanting to be involved with the organisation. Even in life he was like a ghost to them, never noticed by them and never getting across to them. Here it's even worse because he's straight up dead, which presents a good crux to the episode. That realisation you're dead, not quite being able to accept it or come to terms with it because it happens so suddenly. Eugene is the perfect kind of character for an episode like this because he's not a comical nerd who exists to be mocked. He feels very grounded and realistic within the story. Eugene's backstory is established really well, and I think this backstory is an effective way of solidifying that realistic and sympathetic presence within the episode. We learn that when he was a kid he was a maths whiz, getting his maths team into the finals of a tournament only to bottle it like Man United in a semi-final. It creates immediate sympathy for him because we've all been in a position like this, working so hard to get somewhere only to do something wrong and let everyone down. No matter what path in life you take, what career you're in, or where you go, everyone has this moment. The moment where you can't deliver because you succumb to the pressure. Eugene's dad had even taken the day off work to be there to support him, so you can easily understand why this was such a significant negative moment in his life. The use of colour in this flashback is once again great because it's again grey and dull, reflecting the sadness of the moment, how it hurt him so much to know he made the mistake that lost the match and cost his team. He's sitting there in the classroom sad and despondent because the one thing he was good at is maths, but he still feels this colossal sense of failure because he wasn't good enough. It's then that his teacher comes in and notices he's feeling so down, so he steps in as a supportive figure, engaging with Eugene by telling him this story about how he found a strange ball one day when he was golfing. I feel like this is a very strong moment because it's such a good representation of a teacher in a piece of media. He doesn't criticise Eugene for failing, he doesn't even mention it because he knows Eugene won't want to talk about it, but by giving him this strange artifact with its mysterious origin, he has something to hold on to, something to believe in because he's lost. This importance is shown because his dad then comes barging in and shouts at him. Unlike the teacher, he's not supportive. He doesn't understand Eugene's sadness. The eye therefore gives Eugene something to keep going for because it's so mysterious, it has to be alien. When his parents are fighting, he's able to look at the eye or think about the stars, lost in his imagination. When he looks down out of his window, he sees his dad storming out and leaving forever, but when he looks up, he sees billions of shining stars, endless possibilities and beauty. The eye is a form of escape escapism and support for him, because he can retreat into this sci-fi fantasy and dream of where the eye came from. In a way, it's kind of like what Doctor Who represents to a lot of people. It's always there, you can rely on it when you're down, it keeps you going, holding your hand throughout your life and inspiring you to look up at the stars and dream. It's something truly wonderful, so I think this eye and its effect on Eugene is really good for mirroring that love of Doctor Who so many people have.
God, I wanted that alien to come back and claim his eye more than I wanted anything in my life.
The eye being so significant to Eugene is a really good touch because it gives him a lot of character motivation. He uses his mathematic mind to work out things like escape velocity to try and work out where the eye could have possibly come from. It doesn't distract him though, it helps him excel because his skill at maths is now combined with this love of sci-fi and newfound imagination. He might not have realised it, but doing all of these calculations would have taught him a lot, and further expanded his knowledge and ability, even if it all seemed frivolous or fruitless because he's doing them to investigate a marble that apparently fell from the stars. It's not just escapism because it opens up his mind more, allowing him to become a smarter person, even with that emotional turmoil of his dad being gone. Naturally, his interest in aliens leads him to Torchwood, which is probably the most famous secret organisation given how easy it is to track them down. I feel like this backstory is a good explanation as to why he becomes so attached and interested in them. He has this mysterious artifact he's grown up with, something that fired off a spark of imagination and optimism in his mind. So the first place you would want to go is a team of people who specialise in this kind of thing. For all intents and purposes, he is just a fanboy, but he has good reason to be, because who else would you turn to in a situation like this? But much like the cold open established, he's a ghost. They pass by so many people each day, so he just blends into the crowd of crazies they probably have to deal with constantly. No matter what he does or how he does it, he can't get them to notice him because they don't understand. To them, he's just a normal guy, but he has this alien eye that means so much to him. It's helped him through so much and made him who he is. To them, the eye would mean nothing. They'd just chuck it in a cupboard next to a Slitheen claw and a meteorite from Cher's home planet, because it doesn't have the sentimental value it does for Eugene. Everything in his collection was fake or misidentified, but he was so proud of it all. It shows how every person in the world has their own story, their own superstitions and interests. No matter who they are or where they come from, everyone has something that's special to them, but sometimes other people can't see that. It's a great moment when Eugene finally gets to step inside Torchwood. I love his reaction here. Like any of us would be, he's stunned and amazed at what he sees. It's not like Gwen and Everything Changes who was freaked out and a bit shocked. This is different because he knows about this place already, having wanted to get in there for all of his life. I feel like this scene is similar to the scenes of people entering the TARDIS for the first time, taken aback by this wondrous moment, seeing all these amazing things they could only dream of experiencing. Again, it's very relatable, because we know how great this would feel, like stepping on board the TARDIS, this place you've dreamed about and fantasized about being. It's a good moment, even if it is kind of played for laughs.
Christ almighty! The head effects are 11!
After his death, there's a great scene at Eugene's house where Gwen tries to comfort his mum after telling her the news. I really like her denial, it makes it feel so realistic. Much like Eugene in the cold open, it's the sudden nature of death that people just can't really deal with. It comes so out of the blue that it can't possibly feel real. I spoke about it in my Voyage of the Damned review, how it's so easy to fall into that denial, trying to make excuses and desperately cling to any semblance of hope, even though you know it's true. The scene is also good for showing his home life, how much his mum loved him and cared about him, so you can understand her pain and emotion at finding this out. Even though Gwen is the most human member of the team, she can't truly be there as a supportive figure for Eugene's mum. She's alone with her grief, without anything to hang on to like Eugene had with the eye when his dad left, since all she has left is her youngest son, who is an annoying, unsympathetic prick. It's a powerful scene to show the wider effects of his death, assuring Eugene that people do miss him now he's gone, showing that human heart of the story, which is also shown through Gwen, who is the other protagonist of the episode. Gwen is the main central focus of Torchwood, but as Day One showed, she's the most compassionate and human. She can't just let go of Eugene's death because she feels a hunch that there's more to the story. The others were so quick to ignore everything and close the case, moving on with their day, but not Gwen. Eugene was someone who kept trying to get their attention, yet they ignored him, but now that he's dead it makes her wonder what he wanted to show them after all, since it could be related. I also like that Owen calls her out for acting like she's the only one with a heart, even though she's kind of right because of how desensitized the others are.
And why is it that only Gwen seems to have a heart? Yeah, I don't know if you've noticed, but the rest of us are human.
There's a good moment as Gwen confronts him for taking Eugene's stuff. It illustrates that lack of a heart everyone else has, because Owen just goes through this dead guy's things and doesn't think twice, not caring and doing it just because he can. It shows how routine this all is, that Owen sees these kinds of things all the time, so he doesn't really care much anymore, just being another boring case to do paperwork for. It also provides Gwen with a good reason to get stuck in with the mystery. She had a hunch that makes her interest in Eugene's death, but now she has a good excuse to investigate, taking the DVDs back to the rental store they came from. It's a good, logical way to move the plot forward. Much like Blink in Doctor Who Series 3, it puts her in the next place she needs to be for the story to play out, without feeling contrived or tacked on. At the DVD shop we meet Josh, who is immediately established as a bit of a dickhead, trying to hit on Gwen and then slagging Eugene off by calling him a loser. It's a stark contrast to Eugene's mum, showing someone who doesn't seem to miss him and doesn't grieve for him. It's a good mirror, showing that other side to the aftermath of death, the side of people who move on quickly, the people who never really cared in the first place. However, one of the best parts of this scene is how Josh explains that the people who come into the shop are looking for an escape, looking to be someone or somewhere else because of the worlds they can retreat into thanks to the DVDs. It's a nice way to continue that theme of escapism, further showing how Eugene had a personal escape thanks to the eye and his love for sci-fi. The scene gives him a new perspective on life because Josh suggests he's a failure. You can imagine how hard that would hit someone. Imagine if you died and then heard a friend calling you a loser and a failure. It would hurt a lot and give you an existential crisis, making you wonder what you did with your life, whether you just wasted it after all. It's a powerful question to be faced with, because what does make life worth it? For Josh, it's moving to London and having a more interesting life, but Eugene was content with what he had, passing time until the alien came back for his eye. I wouldn't say Eugene's life was a failure, since he was happy. He had the eye to keep him going, and he was able to enjoy his life. Sure, he wasn't famous or notable, but that's not the measure of a successful life. A successful life is how much you feel happy with your time on Earth, and that's the main theme of the episode, the running core throughout. This life after death is further explored at Eugene's workplace. You get a window into more people who feel devastated by the death, Gary and Linda, who were his co-workers. It shows more of that personal life by giving a sense of how the people around Eugene feel about him. Even though he wasn't the best at his job, his boss still kept him around to be kind, and because he was generally liked by the people there. It answers Eugene's question of whether he's a failure because it shows he had an impact on the people around him, which is enough. Linda wanted to get out of there and move to Australia, so Eugene encouraged her, wanting her to achieve her happiness and make a better life for herself, even offering to pay for it with the money he could get from selling the eye. It's another way of making the viewer feel sympathy for him, because he tried his best for the people around him, trying to look after them and make their lives better thanks to the eye, just like it did for him. The plot point of selling the eye on eBay is a really good, grounded way for the plot to develop. From Eugene's perspective, it just makes sense to go there to sell it. Yeah, people laughed at him, but as Doctor Who established with Henry Van Staten, there are people out there who would buy these things. So it's believable when we find out the eye sold for £15,005.50, which, you know, could probably buy you half a Series 9 steelbook. Because you know this is a world where aliens exist and where people are willing to pay for artifacts, it doesn't feel absurd that this would happen, so you can believe it. It's just a good twist in the path, making the plot thicken in a smart and realistic way to make Gwen more intrigued. The reasoning for selling the eye is also good because Eugene realised his dad didn't leave to go to America, and actually ended up working at a car servicing garage down the road. The revelation completely threw Eugene's life upside down, and you can clearly see why, because he doesn't know what to believe anymore. This whole time he believed his dad was in America, but it was a lie. He can't even trust the story behind the eye anymore because it could also be fake, just a story to make him feel better after losing the maths competition. It shatters his very sense of identity because he built so much of his life and his sense of self around this eye, and the belief that one day the alien would come back for it. The eye was his faith, and that has been broken now, so it's a really great piece of character motivation to sell the eye, despite its sentimentality. The eye is established by Captain Jack as a Dogon sixth eye, which allows people to see a new perspective on their past life. I think this is a great explanation of what the eye is, and why Eugene can watch everything unfold despite being dead, creating a good sci-fi narrative tool.
It's one in the back. Lets you see behind you where you've been. Kind of puts things in perspective.
The whole of Random Shoes is essentially based around the classic Christmas movie It's a Wonderful Life, where a down-on-his-luck businessman is given another reason to live after an angel shows him how much of an impact he makes on those around him. This episode follows a very similar path, allowing Eugene to see these faces from his life and gain a new perspective of the time he spent walking the earth. He's this ghost that gets to see what follows his death, which is a very strong power to be given. It's a bit similar to the previous episode, They Keep Killing Susie, where the titular Susie was brought back to life and had a chance to reflect upon how Torchwood replaced her with Gwen, seeing what happened after she died. She saw how the earth just kept turning and everyone around her just moved on from her and her death. We get a similar exploration here, but with a more positive, yet melancholic note. Rather than being moved on from, we get to see all the people Eugene influenced and who cared about him. He gets this really rare chance to see how they react to his death, and how much he meant to the people around him. He thought he was a failure for so long, but he wasn't, because this new perspective shows his impact on others, how even being a normal, average person is special because of the people you influence and impact along the way. It's a really great narrative to explore, and it's handled very well in my opinion, becoming a very earnest and humble, yet very emotional story of identity and faith. It's so human, and that's what I love about the episode, because it feels so grounded and relatable. It then turns out that Eugene's friend Gary was the one who hiked the price of the eBay auction up. His intentions initially being to cheer Eugene up a bit because he was feeling low due to the whole dad thing. It's good for showing those lies Eugene believed in, since he thought the alien was back to claim his eye, but it was actually just Gary. It feels like the story is reaching a simple dead end, but then he reveals that the £15,000 bid was real, that wasn't him. This is a nice turn of events because it reignites that sense of mystery. We thought the explanation would be simple, that it was just Gary trying to cheer his friend up with some false hope, but the genuine hope returns since maybe the alien is real after all. I also think it shows how even the best intentions can sometimes backfire and hurt someone. Gary misses Eugene. He didn't make the fake bids to humiliate him or prank him. He just wanted to help a friend, like subscribing to their YouTube channel to make them feel better. But it's a dangerous game to play because it creates that false hope. It makes Eugene feel a sense of success that wasn't real, it was just a lie. Regardless of the intentions, it's damaging because it warped his perspective and made him believe something that wasn't true. I suppose you could say the same for the teacher at the beginning. He just wanted to give this downtrodden child a little trinket he found to cheer him up, but that resulted in Eugene developing this obsession with it and basing so much of his life around it and being so attached, even if it was just supposed to be a little token of support, like Gary's fake bids. Gary had never intended it to go so far, but he is partially responsible for what happened to Eugene. We then find out the true extent of the consequences of Gary's innocent intentions. Gwen goes to a Happy Cook motorway restaurant where Eugene went to make the exchange with the alien, only to see Gary and Josh there instead. It feeds back into that sense of broken faith, because once again, everything he believed in and trusted is actually a lie, since they did the final bid of £15,005.50. He had built up such confidence only to find out this truth, with them not even wanting to pay the money they bid, offering him £34 and planning to resell it online now that they know how much it can go for. Much like his dad walking out, it's such a painful realization for Eugene, reflected with the Dutch angles and intensely greyish and blue colour scheme. It's a moment of intense mental struggle for him, grappling with this sudden revelation and sense of betrayal from people he thought were his friends. It makes him feel cheated because he still believes the alien is out there, as they weren't the ones to bid the initial $15,000. But then Eugene gets another gut punch, since the person who seemed to be the alien was just a very rich collector. It's proof that everything is a lie, and for all Eugene knows, the eye itself isn't even real because he doesn't know it's a Dogon 6th eye. In this point of time, it's just a fancy marble, despite all that sentimentality. The whole backstory he'd dreamed up, all the escapism, it was all for nothing. He spent his whole life waiting for an alien to come and claim the eye, just to find out he's been wasting his time. So you understand why he feels like a failure. It's not just the maths competition and his dad leaving. He's dedicated his life to this eye and finding its owner who doesn't actually exist. It got him through so much, but now it's hollow, without any meaning anymore. Even though it did all of that for him, he now thinks his entire life has been pointless, and you can understand why. The whole story then starts to get pieced together as we see Josh and Eugene grapple over with the eye like Frodo and Gollum inside Mount Doom. Even though they're meant to be friends, this greed has overtaken Josh and created a huge division between him and Eugene, with Gary also getting involved, trying to get the eye out of Eugene, who swallows it. This petty squabble is the perfect kind of climax for the episode, because the story has been so character based. It didn't need to be some grand, exciting moment. It's just a fight between friends over a piece of junk they want to sell. There's something so earnest about it, which sums the episode as a whole up. It gives a good sense as to the problems everyday people have to face, how such simple things can break friends apart. Then Gary and Josh arrive in the present day, trying to silence the waitress from telling Gwen, only to find out they're too late. I like that Gary redeems himself here, stopping Josh from escaping because he misses Eugene. Unlike Josh, Gary was a real friend who cared about Eugene and just made a mistake. It was Josh who took things too far by making the final bid. Gary just wanted to be a supportive friend, but then things got out of control against his will. It's a nice bit of redemption for him since he gives Gwen the last piece of the puzzle. The timeline now all slotting into place and becoming a complete story, now knowing what happened to poor Eugene as he was running away and got hit by a car, resulting in his death. Again, I like how ordinary it all is. He wasn't shot by some alien with a ray gun. He simply ran out into a road and didn't notice the car coming. So that's how he died. It's boring, but in a good way. It doesn't need the alien eye to work, which makes it such a good moment. Just something so simple and regular, which is the opposite of what Torchwood is used to.
Oh, he was a sweet guy. That is very sad. Now, can we get on with some proper work, please?
I think Paul Shakur is great in these closing scenes. Eugene gives a really good monologue reflecting upon the speed of life, how on motorways are hundreds of people passing by, each with their own lives, their own dreams and drama. He reflects on life, how unpredictable and beautiful it is, with all this noise and all this traffic both literally and mentally. It's a brilliant piece of writing and it's delivered so well, serving as a good exploration of what the episode is all about. It's about the meaning of life, which is simply feeling alive and enjoying yourself in the moment. It's very powerful and strong, and I think it's placed perfectly within the narrative. It's at the end of the story, the end of Eugene's life, a tragic moment, but this monologue adds a real bittersweet feeling to it all. Yes, he died, but he died when he felt more alive than he ever had, him being able to appreciate the moment with adrenaline through his veins. Sure, he based his life around a complete lie, but that doesn't change who he was. Even if it was a lie, it gave him a sense of purpose and caused him to have a positive impact on others, so his life was worth it in the end. Then during his funeral, he realizes he had this chance to reflect on his life, being able to see what nobody gets to see, life after death. I like that he acknowledges his journey as a ghost, understanding the impact he had on these people around him and knowing he made something of his life. He's able to make peace with his inner crisis of identity, justifying his life choices. It even allows him to understand and forgive his dad for leaving, since he knows that his dad is just an ordinary man who made a mess of things, which is kind of like Eugene himself when you think about it. Eugene's death even serves as the catalyst for his dad returning to the family, showing that even in death, Eugene helps people. As I said, it's a very bittersweet moment for the story, a really emotional way to wrap things up and bring the story together nicely. Then there's the final scene of the wake, Eugene's family and friends gathering at his house as he wonders why he's still hanging around, now that the eye is gone from his body. It's a good question to ask because both he and the audience were led to believe that he could only stay around as long as the eye was inside of him. It creates one last mystery, one final moment of reflection for him, which is what we all wish we could have. One last moment to look upon those around you and say goodbye. This chance comes as Eugene saves Gwen from getting hit by a car, suddenly becoming real again, everyone able to see him one more time. I feel like this is such a powerful and emotional ending because it's that final goodbye. He finally gets to interact with Torchwood, what he's wanted all this time, and being able to save Gwen's life. It's another act of greatness from Eugene, having gone through this journey of his own life to allow him to save Gwen's. Usually in a story like this would be an act of redemption from someone who wasn't a good person in life, but this is actually an act of consolidation by Eugene, something that shows him his life was worth it and that he wasn't a failure. Yes, he helped those around him and cheered people up, but this is a clear act that proves to him everything he did was worth it. Believing in the eye, basing his life around a story, and desperately seeking out Torchwood was all worth it, because he gets this moment to be a hero, to be noticed, which is what he wanted. It's the reason he was able to stay alive, to save Gwen and have this final goodbye. The episode ends with yet another fantastic monologue, Eugene explaining that life is all about the simple things, the boring things. It's about bacon and eggs, the random shoes, and all these minor things we take for granted. This is a beautiful speech, and it really struck a chord with me because it's absolutely true. Life is about embracing who you are and enjoying the little things. It's not about being someone else or saving the world. Life is beautiful because it's so normal. It reminds me of what I said at the end of my day 1 review. Being part of Torchwood isn't real life. These aliens and monsters aren't what life is about. Life is about the small victories, the little moments that are special to you and only you. You've got to embrace it and enjoy every second you have, because you don't know when it will be over. I love this ending message, and it's once again delivered so well, with a sense of wonder and optimism, making it truly touching and thought-provoking. Random Shoes often seems to get quite a bad rap, but I don't know why. It's a really moving episode of Torchwood that flies under the radar, being almost a sleeper hit of sorts. I really like the direction it takes, with a very character heavy and personal story, crafting such a simple tale of ordinary life and celebrating it. There are no stakes to the episode, no grand alien scheme or epic intense invasion. It's just a celebration of what life is and why it's special. The constant narration from Eugene could be seen as annoying or off-putting, but I think it adds that personal touch necessary for the story to thrive, along with the flashbacks piecing together a really good mystery and interesting puzzle as we journey through Eugene's life. The "It's a Wonderful Life" style plot is really good for the character journey, giving Eugene this chance to reflect on his life and whether it was worth it. A lot of people call Random Shoes the love and monsters of Torchwood, and they usually say that in a bad way, but I think it's similar to episode for good reasons, because it has that interesting story format and the subtext of what it means to be a Doctor Who fan, and why we cherish this media property thanks to escapism and togetherness. The story is paced slightly awkwardly, but I would give it an A rank on the Torchwood Series 1 tier list. It's so simple, yet very emotional and sweet at the same time. Eve Miles and Paul Shakur are fantastic in their roles, and I think the directing by James Erskine is wonderful. It's one of those Torchwood episodes that sets out to tell a simple, effective story, without overcomplicating it or trying too hard to be edgy. It's earnest with what it sets out to do, and that makes it such a strong episode, because it tells that great story in a great way. It balances existential themes about life after death with a very optimistic message about embracing life, and a really grounded feeling thanks to the realistic characters. Who would have thought an episode about a plastic eye and random shoes would be one of the standouts in Torchwood Series 1? And I'd like to give a very special thank you to my gold level patrons: Alex Marston, Calvin, Daniel Shillito, Franz Horn aka Line Vortex, John, and Stefanik Never Miller. Thank you so much for your support.